Challenges galore for Sri Lanka's fragile economy, hit by multiple attacks and terrorist incidents. Sri Lanka now faces a likely collapse in tourism following Easter Sunday bomb attacks on churches and hotels. This would seal a severe blow to Ireland's economy and financial markets. It can potentially force it to seek further IMF assistance. The International Monetary Fund, popularly known as IMF, had extended last month $1.5 billion extra loan for 2020, a key step in keeping foreign investors involved in what so far this year has been a top-performing frontier debt market. But with growth and therefore state revenues now likely to slow significantly, budget targets agreed with IMF, this may have to be reviewed, and government is expected to resist pressure for any spending cuts before elections expected later this year. There is even a possibility that more IMF money may be needed if foreign investment falls, adding to the hard currency gap left by plunging tourism receipts. Now, tourism is Sri Lanka's third largest and fastest growing source of foreign currency, after remittances and garment exports accounting for almost $4.4 billion of GDP in 2018. A fall in tourism receipt is bound to weaken rupee over time. The central bank, whose coffers are too light to defend currency through interventions, is likely to have to raise interest rates. And there are numerous travel advisories in place already, and it is the tourism industry of Sri Lanka that might end up taking hardest punch post the bombings. The footfall in tourist sites has already fallen drastically. Domestic tourists, they are avoiding popular spots.
This situation, how does this affect your business?
It's terrible, actually, really bad. Most of our customers are locals. It's really bad. Bad for the community and the country in general.
All the sites that were bombed last Sunday were extremely popular among domestic and global tourists, and the tourism industry is facing the direct aftermath of the attacks.
2-3 months ago, Sri Lankan tourism is very well. It's very good. Now is that these 3 days, 4 days, everything lost.
Lanka's finance minister said country could see a drop in tourist arrivals by almost 30%. Remember, tourism is Sri Lanka's third largest and the fast growing source of foreign currency. In 2018, tourism accounted for almost $4.4 billion or 4.9% of GDP. Now, post the bombings, the loss to tourism industry is pegged at $1.5 billion. But apart from tourism, other businesses too have been hit. Colombo is unusually quiet even 6 days after bombing. Some shops have opened their shutters, but there are no customers.
Definitely, we are losing. We have no business, no income. I don't know how to live in this country. Now, that's the problem. Now, in the current situation, very difficult for us. That's the thing. The current situation, not only me, so many people are like that.
And Vijay Kumaran's shoe shop is located across Colombo Street in St. Anthony's Church. A blast ripped through church last Sunday. Almost all shops located near church have remained closed since Easter.
I also tried that the late on, they no come to this area because they all are Friday. No, the Kochikada, it's the Bomblas area, then they are not coming to the other area. People are not coming. The vehicle are not coming to this side. No, it will take more than one or 2 months. It will take the normal.
Colombo's auto drivers too have been affected post the blast. They say their daily incomes have dropped by almost 50% due to shortage of passengers. The government curfew too has contributed in the slowdown of businesses. On the ground, there is a fear of more blast. The discovery of fresh explosives and the several controlled explosions have added to this fear. In light of this, a lot of residents in Colombo are keeping indoors.
Too empty. All the Colombo city too empty. That's the problem. And they Now government allows curfew in night 10 to early morning 4 or 5. It's not good because we are coming to work and some people is going to work. Then every morning they are find somewhere bombs. That's the problem.
There is another factor that is impacting businesses in Sri Lanka. The foreign workers now fear for their lives. Several of them want to go back to their countries.
फटता तो मुश्किल नहीं था, लेकिन इधर एवरीडे बम फट रहा है, इसलिए हम लोग को बहुत डर का माहौल है, बहुत डर फील हो रहा है, इसलिए हम लोग अपने स्वदेश वापस जाना चाहते हैं सेफ्टी के साथ.
And our associate editor Palki Sharma Upadhyay is in Colombo and gets you the latest on how the grief-stricken nation is coping 1 week after the bombings. Let's listen her.
This is the Dutch hospital in Colombo. It's a 17th century structure and, as the name suggests, built by the Dutch as a hospital for their people here. Post-independence, it was turned into a police station, and this place has seen some of the worst terror attacks, some of the worst bloodshed at the time of the LTTE civil war. In 2011, it was declared a heritage structure and converted into a shopping precinct. On any given Sunday, you see this place full of people. These benches are all occupied, these seats are all occupied, and you see long queues of people outside their favorite restaurants waiting for their turn at their table. But today all you see is the staff. This place wears a deserted look because this is not just another Sunday. It's the first Sunday after the Easter terror attacks in which more than 250 people were killed across Sri Lanka, multiple bombings in churches and five-star hotels. And Sri Lanka is still coming to terms with what it saw, the horror that unfolded last Sunday. Today we saw a televised mass. Today we saw the top people in the government and the opposition share one frame to send out a message of solidarity. You go down the street, you see restaurants still hoping for people to come for lunch, but people are few and far between. All you see is security officials, army men armed to the teeth walking the streets. So on the surface, you would say that it's just another sleepy city maybe on a weekend, but Colombo is living under the shadow of terror. With video journalist Sanjeet Rao, this is Palki Sharma Upadhyay for WION, World is One.
And we're joined by our correspondent, Siddhant Sibal. He's just come back from Colombo after spending close to a week there. Well, Siddhant, a very good morning to you first of all. Well, clearly economy is going to be the first victim of these terror attacks. What have you seen there?
Well, economy, of course, is the first victim of the terror attack, especially the tourism business. It's all deserted now, especially the fact that number of foreign tourists were, in fact, killed in this terror attack. More than 30 foreign people have died, including 11 Indians have died in the terror attack. And remember, the economy in Sri Lanka is based majorly on the tourism business, and this time, of course, is kind of a lean season, but still there is a hotel occupancy. Well, we were staying in a hotel where it was a completely deserted hotel, primarily because of the impact of the terror attack. And most of foreigners will not like to visit Sri Lanka now, given the fact the level of threat. In fact, there are the threat is still on, and people are advised not to visit Sri Lanka. We know a number of countries, including India, has issued travel advisory not to visit the country and cancel all non-essential travel to the country. And remember, with each advisory, a country majorly loses a lot of tourists coming to that country. So clearly, Sri Lanka right now reeling under a lot of pressure, of course, whether it's terrorism or whether it's the impact of terrorism. One thing I can tell you is someone's loss is someone's gain. We know that a lot of tourists won't be going, foreign tourists won't be going to Sri Lankan beaches, but they will and are expected to visit India now, especially Goa. So Goa can benefit from the loss, but by and large, Sri Lanka, of course, right now having a deserted look. Of course, Colombo city is known as a tourist-friendly city, but if you go around the city, it's almost like a curfew-like situation. We know that curfew is imposed every night, but during the days as well, people are not keen to open their shops. And of course, the heavy police presence is something that that obviously will dampen the spirit of any tourist with the checking, especially because if you go around, you are likely to be checked by multiple security authorities wherever you are, at least in Colombo city. So that is something that no tourist would like to have.
And what about the international aid, Siddhant? Because this, at this moment, clearly doesn't require an international aid. But this is not, I know, anything less than a catastrophe or overall calamity. So what do you think how Sri Lankan government plans to cope up with this loss of man hours, loss of economy, and a bigger loss, which is of tourism business for the long time to come?
Well, the priority in front of the government, the Sri Lankan government right now, is to make sure that the country is safe for even its own citizens. We have seen last week, especially on Friday, there was a shootout in which 15 people died, and that has heightened the fear in the country that there are multiple threats. So the priority in front of the government right now is to make sure that Sri Lanka is a safe country to be for its own citizens. Only next comes the other priority, that it's safe for foreign citizens, of course, the foreign countries and nationals. In fact, I have been speaking to a number of diplomats, including the diplomats here based in Delhi, who all have said that, of course, the Americans have withdrawn their non-essential diplomats here, including their family, but there are countries who have increased the number of diplomats in Sri Lanka to make sure that their citizens don't face any problem, and if they face any problem, they are catered to. We also know that the Indian mission is working overtime in Sri Lanka. Number of Indian expatriates are living in country, and of course, in the aftermath of the terror attack which took place on Sunday, last Sunday, a number of Indian tourists wanted to come back, and the Indian mission in Sri Lanka facilitated them. So, number of Indians did come back to India, and of course, I have been speaking to people on the ground, especially Indian workers, because there are huge number of Indian workers in Sri Lanka. A lot of Indians and Bangladeshis who are working in Sri Lanka and of course providing support to their economy. They of course are really scared to right now go around. Given the threat level, we have seen number of controlled explosions taking place in Colombo city as well. So clearly right now that is the priority, but of course it's going to have a long-term impact. The government of course hasn't announced any special package to give a boost to the economy, but by and large this is the second next priority for the government, and I do expect when the threat is it comes down after 2 or 3 weeks. Right now, of course, there is heightened tension in the country. Then, of course, the government is expected to focus on the tourism sector and, of course, the economy, because right now the big focus is on the issue of terrorism, and then comes economy and, of course, tourism sector.
Thank you, Siddhant Sibal, for getting us all these details.